What's up, everyone? How you guys doing? And I realized something. A year and 2 days ago, I uploaded my first video. And when I found this out, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I realized that, hey, this is actually a pretty good opportunity for me to remake the very first video that I ever did, which was to talk about the 5 underrated 4-star characters for your account. Generally, that was made in 4.5. And obviously, a lot has changed. We're now in 5.5. So what better way to revisit this by having a new list for the current times? But we have a little bit of a difference. It's going to be 6 underrated characters, and we're going to have a twist where each one comes from a different region. So yeah, let's get this video started. Now for this video, I am going to, as mentioned, the rules is 1 per region, and we aren't going to be looking at the obvious choices like your bandits and your officials and your shanglings, because that will be a little bit too overpowered. I also don't want to bring characters that I mentioned in the previous video, except for one, which is for Mondstadt, right? Because, well, Mondstadt hasn't gotten pretty good changes recently. That being said, right, yeah, we're going to be talking about these characters, and obviously as 4 stars we also talk about their constellations as well. But first and foremost, I think this is the character that is has been on the rise recently, and she is a Chevreuse Pyro Polam character from Fontaine. She mostly acts as a support, although she does have some healing capabilities. What she basically does is that through her A1 passive, she's able to give pyro and electro resistance shred by 40% for 6 seconds when you activate the overloaded reaction. This can only happen if you have all pyro and electro characters with one of each element. And so it's going to be pretty nice because obviously it means that you do a lot more damage. Now, looking at the A4 passive, which ties in very well to her kit, right? Whenever you apply overloaded, right, her whole skill changes into an overcharged ball, right? And basically when you fire this overcharged ball, you will be able to give your team a pretty nice attack bonus for 30 seconds. It's a very long bonus, right? And it depends on your HP. It maxes out at 40% for 40k HP. So you can kind of see how good it can be when you build HP on her, because her scaling, her healing actually scales on HP. So that's through her skill, right? But before I talk about her healing, yeah, it's just a lot of bonuses, right? You basically do more damage, you get a higher attack, which is going to be very nice for your team. And then when you look at her skill, it basically does healing, single target. It is periodically healing. So, but it is still a pretty decent amount for your active character, and this burst just does damage. So all in all, Chevreuse pretty good pyro support for overload team comps. Her constellations are pretty okay, but she's obviously pretty damn decent at C0. C1 basically gives energy to the characters that activates overloaded. A little bit inconsistent, and so it's not really that noticeable. C2 means more attacks from her skill. C4 basically, when you use your burst, your first whole skill will not consume the cooldown, so you can basically fire twice unless you use it after 6 seconds. And the C6, basically after the 12 seconds of healing from the skill, you will be able to heal the whole team to 10% of Chevreuse HP. It's going to be pretty nice. And at the same time, when any character receives healing from Chevreuse, gets additional pyro or an electro damage bonus as well. Obviously the main character gets the most benefit, but it can also be pretty good for your other characters as well for the sub DPSs. Overall, Chevreuse is a pretty good character, especially ever since her release. We've gotten characters like Arlecchino, Malvika, Cloran, Veressa, who are all pretty good with direction, even characters like Auroron and Iansan as well. And yeah, you can see that a lot of people are recommending overload team comps in this day and age, and I think it's pretty good because obviously it is restrictive, but especially with the nature of bandit being used a lot in a lot of places, having a character that can fit in the slot, albeit in a very niche situation, is very, very good for players who really invested into like these characters like your Malvikas or your Clorans or your Veressas, so on and so forth. So yeah, all in all, Chevreuse is a pretty good character and a pretty good damn support as well. Alright, now we're going into Liyue. We'll talk about Lanyan. I could talk about Garming in this video, but I was thinking maybe, Lanyan is a little bit more universal. So yeah, talking about Lanyan, who is Anemo Catalyst. She mostly acts as a shield, although a shielder, although she can be used as a on-field driver as well, but that's more of like higher constellations kind of thing. The main part of her kit comes from her skill, where she is basically able to when you use a skill, she can dash forward, and if she absorbs the elements on the enemy, she can actually infuse the elements onto the character, onto her own shield, right? It must be one of the 4 swallowable elements, but yeah, it basically gives you additional absorption and efficiency from that element. But the main thing about her shield is that it obviously gives her a decent amount of protection. It scales based on her attack, and it also does pretty decent damage as well. The A1 passive also increases the damage based on the element that you absorb, so it's going to be pretty decent nonetheless. A4 passive, kind of not that important, but it does give her more damage based on her EM. That being said, for a pure shooter build who isn't even reliant on the burst, which basically does damage and grouping, it's just mainly attack that you are going for, and once you have your attack settled, you can then go for like ER, EM, so on and so forth. So yeah, as I mentioned, very simple kit. It's a lot of shielding, very comparable, especially at C0 compared to other shielders. She does lose out a little bit to Layla, but she's good nonetheless, especially you can consider that she can use the Veridescent Venerer set. That means that she can shred resistance of the element that she swirls. That being said, right, looking at the other abilities, basically C1 gives her more damage through her skill, right? The skill, she throws the chakras at enemies. You basically get another instance of damage from that. The C2 is what a lot of people talk about, which is the refreshable skill, not skill, but the refreshable shield. Basically, when your active character normal attacks, you refresh the shield's restore. Restore is the word that I'll use. Will restore 40% of the shield's damage absorption, right? And this can happen every 2 seconds. Basically, what this means is that as long as the shield's not broken, right, you can basically like restore some of the health of your shield back every 2 seconds. And while it wouldn't really stack up all the way to the full 14 seconds with 7 stacks, right? It's still a pretty decent amount of sustain for your team. C3 is pretty okay. C4 is okay. C3 is okay, but it also gives you more shield because it's skill, right? The C4 kind of incentivizes you to use your burst a lot more, because when using your burst, you get additional EM for 12 seconds, which can be pretty nice. And for the C6, an additional stack of the skill, which also means that you will be able to basically have less energy requirements. You can also use your skill twice and also do more damage as well. All in all, Lanyan is a very good sustain, very good shooter to have at C0. One of the better characters, especially consider that she can swirl as well, so that makes it very nice for players. At the same time, she's also very good for characters like Arlecchino, who appreciate both the VV shred and also because she doesn't want healers, so it's really good for her that she doesn't really it works very well with Arlecchino, right? So yeah, that's basically that for Lanyan. A pretty good character, pretty good solid sustain at low investments. Now when it comes to Netland, obviously it's a hard choice between this and Auroron, but I decided to go for Iansan instead, because Iansan I think benefits a lot more teams than Auroron. But what does Iansan basically do? Right, she's a very good attack buffer through her burst, right, which kind of also promotes characters who move around quite a bit. How this happens is through the kinetic energy scale, which basically tracks how much Iansan moves, not Iansan, the active character moves, and this will increase the amount of night souls that you get through her A1 passive. It also means that you kind of, not A1, this is not the A1, sorry, this is the A1, right? You kind of also have, before C2, you kind of also have to do a normal touch attack when you're in Night Soul Blessings to activate this, which is the Swift Stormflight. But yeah, basically you track the amount of Night Soul that you get, and the higher Night Soul, you basically get higher attack bonuses, as you will see right here. So you need to meet the threshold of 42 Night Soul points, basically. Yeah, just a lot of attack buffs for the team, as long as your characters kind of work into a mechanic, which is I move around quite a lot. So this applies to your plunging characters, your characters like Moika, who like spins a lot, your characters that are like Cloran, who like kind of moves quite a bit, right? Your Shao's also very nice, your Chaska's very nice. So there's a lot of tech buffs for characters who play into that team comp. She kind of also classifies as a healer, but I want to say this, she kind of sucks at healing. So I wouldn't really build her for healing or use her as a solo sustain, especially if you have Faruzan in your team. That being said, constellations are all also pretty good. T1 gives energy for every 6 night soul points you consume, so it definitely reduces the energy requirements quite a lot. T2 gives the additional attack bonus, as well as not needing the charge attack to activate the A1 passive. T4 is a very nice way of gaining extra night soul points when your active character bursts. Every time she uses her night soul points when she has the scale active. That being said, right, it also helps to recycle overflow energy, night soul points, as well, and she can recycle them and use them when the next time she gains night soul points at a 50% rate. So what this basically means is that she gets additional energy from her team, and when that energy overflows, she can recycle that into the next time she actually gains night soul points again. So just a lot of faster generation, especially when you consider the C6 as well. Whenever you overflow, you will get the characters will get 25% damage increase. The active character gets it, as well as increasing her burst duration. So yeah, it's just a lot of buffs for the team as long as you play into the archetype. For characters that don't really appreciate Bennett because of his static rotations, having a lot more dynamic rotations through Iansan would definitely be pretty good. And she's definitely a pretty good character for those teams. Now, we're talking about the character that I am actually the only character that's only going to be returning from the very first video to this will be Rosaria. The main reason is because Monster hasn't gotten good upgrades, except for technically Diona, but I don't really talk about Diona that much because she is quite niche, and I think that there are other characters who are a lot more universal that work well as well. The main, and for this, the representative for Mondstadt will be Rosaria. It is a cryo polearm character, and she's mostly a sub DPS but can support as well. She works well in multiple team comps like freeze and reverse melt, but the main part of her kit comes from her burst, right? When you activate it, 2 instances of attack, and then the ice field that is left behind will do cryo damage once every 2 seconds. And it has no ICD, which means that technically it can melt on every hit, which is going to be pretty nice. It has 4 instances, once every 2 seconds, but can be increased with C2, as we'll talk about later. But at the same time, through her A4 passive, she's able to give crit rate to the team based on her crit rate. At max, it is 15%, which you can activate it by having it at 100%, but she gets 12% for free when you use a skill behind your enemy, right? So but generally it's just 100% crit rate, but gives 15% crit rate to the team, which is very, very nice. She's able to support her team in that way. At the same time, she also has pretty decent early constellations. D1 C6 kind of useless. We don't look about it unless you play physical Rosaria, which is like why, but no judging, but why? I would like to know in the comments down below. C2 does increase your burst, which means that you have 2 extra ticks of the dot, while C4 does give you energy for hitting critical hits, right, with your skill. So all in all, Rosaria, pretty good character. Pretty simple kit because she's an early character, obviously. But yeah, just basically the ability for her to support her team, also do decent damage. I think she is one of the best aged characters ever since the release. And I think that she's a pretty good character, especially, if we go towards Seshnaya, right, with the Land of Cryo, we might see more use out of her in the future as well. But before we continue, here's a little bit of a reminder to everyone who's watching. If you're not subscribed, please remember to hit the subscribe button. And if you like this video, thumbs up, share, comments, all that good YouTube stuff. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Inazuma right now. And then Inazuma is a little bit hard because I didn't want to really include Kishinobu once again. But thinking about it, hey, we have Kirara. I think Kirara is a pretty decent character to represent Inazuma. The main part of the kit comes from her skill. As a sword Dendro character, she is able to apply Dendro to a team, but as a shooter, she's also able to sustain them as well. The main part of the kit comes from her skill. Basically, there's two versions. The press, which is the less common version. You press, you create particles, you create a shield, and then when you press the skill again, you basically refresh the shield, and whatever remaining health from the previous one will be added on at like 40%, if I'm not wrong. The one that's more common is the hold, which turns her into the box cat, also known as the urgent Neko Parcel. And basically, whenever you move around in this form, you will be able to damage enemies. You'll also be able to apply Dendro and create particles periodically as well. Throughout this whole instance is about 3 particles. But at the end of your skill, or once your shield gets destroyed or whatever, or use a skill again, you'll be able to do AoE Dendro damage, and this will create another 3 particles as well. So all in all, Shinobu, Kirara, pretty good at sustaining for Dendro based teams. A little bit niche, but it's pretty good nonetheless. The A1 passive, right? The A1 passive basically creates another shield once your box form ends or resets the duration. So it's going to be pretty nice for continuous sustains. And that's basically it. Her burst not really that important. Gives a little bit of damage, but that's about it. So it's not really that crazy. Basically that's that. C1 and C1 is like okay. Basically makes your burst do more damage, but that's not the main part of the kit, so let's skip. Or C2 is also kind of bad. C2 is mostly for co-op, so let's ignore that. C3 can be good because it obviously increases your shield. C4 is pretty decent for off-field Dendro application. This is a good point to stop at because obviously more Dendro application means that you can do more reactions and also do decent amount of damage as well. This helps keeps the uptime of Deep Wood if she's holding it. And the C6 is also pretty decent because it also gives elemental damage bonus for your team when she uses her skill or her burst. So it's going to be very nice to have additional damage from this shielder herself. So yeah, Kirara is pretty good. Obviously someone who's a lot more dependent on different constellations. As a shielder, she's fine at C0, but her supportive capabilities come out a lot more once you have like more, especially the C4 and the C6 as well. But generally, as a pure shield bot, pretty good nonetheless. All right, so the last one is obviously Sumeru, and kind of hard to make a Sumeru list because most of the 4-stars are kind of bad in my opinion from Sumeru. Your Kaves, your Doris, so on and so forth. I didn't add in Layla because even though Layla is pretty good, it'll be the 3rd shielder on the list, and I'm not going to add in a 3rd shielder out of 6. Sethos is Sethos. He's just a DPS. He's fine, but he's not going to break records. Holly is actually pretty decent in my opinion, but I think that she's too niche in one specific team comp, which is the Nilo Bloom team comps. So, and I thought about niche, but because she performs so damn well in that niche, we just had to add this character in, and that is Faruzan. So Faruzan, notorious for being like, oh, you kind of need the C6 character on her for it to work well. And we talk about why, right? If you look at how insane her kit is and the one restriction behind it, you kind of understand like, oh yeah, C6 actually makes a lot of difference, right? What does she do, right? Her burst is the main part of the kit. She summons this dazzling polyhedron, which will basically unleash this effect called the Windward Pulse, which at the same time applies the wind's benefit to your team and the wind's bill to your enemies, right? And this gives, the benefit gives the attack bonus, while the not the damage bonus, sorry, while the bills does the animal restaurant, right? It's a pretty decent amount to kind of see why it's kind of benefiting, and especially since it scales upon your level. So yeah, it's just a lot of bonuses, but it does have a very high cost of 80. That being said, right, how does she get energy? Is through her skill. Basically, she enters into the Manifest Gale state, which allows her to do a charge shot that does a little bit of a hurricane, right? A pressurized collapse, basically. And then this is one that creates the energy. But you can see that because of her high energy requirements, she kind of high energy requirements on her burst. You see that she needs a lot of ER to maintain this, and not only for herself but also for her team as well. The A1 kind of helps with doing more shred, right? Because you activate the wind build once again, and the A4 is the one that gives a lot of damage to your team, right? Gonna be a lot of benefits, but because of these benefits being locked behind her burst, which is very important for her to get it off constantly. Now, looking at constellations, right? C1 is kind of bad because you in more Faruzan uptime, which means that actually your DPS gets less of the buff, but it can be a good quality of life if you miss the first hurricane arrow for your skill. The second one, pretty decent, increases your burst duration. The C4 also helps to restore a little bit of energy, which by itself isn't enough, but it's going to be pretty nice when you tie into her C6, right? C5 is the one that increases the burst, which is nice, and C6, basically the wind secret ways, the wind benefit, characters that have it will receive 40% increased crit damage when they deal animal damage, which is your main DPSs basically. And then whenever your characters do damage, they will apply that same pressurized collapse that we talked about earlier, you know, the one that gives the energy. So this happens once every 3 seconds, and that what this basically means is that when they are affected by the wind's benefit, they are also applying that same pressurized collapse to regain energy for your team. And so you're basically just being able to refund and funnel and create more particles for yourself and the team, which not only reduces the energy cost of your team, but also for Faruzan as well, which is most important. It can reduce her energy requirements by 100%, if I'm being honest, and that is pretty crazy. So, and you can see that amongst all the benefits, by hit, yeah, it's just a lot of benefits, but you just have to meet their energy threshold, which makes it a lot easier with C6 Faruzan. So all in all, yes, I know Faruzan kind of breaks this list a little bit, but to see that, oh, Faruzan's actually pretty crazy, right, at high constellations. Like, it's kind of like, oh, if you do have it and you do have characters that work well with it, which is kind of small but could get bigger in the future, like, hey, you should actually kind of invest. This is kind of a rogue one, but like, I'd rather include her in than Dory, to be honest. So yeah, that's that. To close this video off, we're going to talk about some honorable mentions. I think people would kill me if I did not mention Auroron. He's a pretty good electro applicator, especially even outside of electro charge teams. He can be pretty good. We've seen him being worked with Chevreuse and like Malvika in well, not electro charge but overloaded team comps, which is going to be pretty decent, right? Yeah, it's just a lot of pretty good stuff. You probably want to bring him more for support in those cases, but he can do pretty decent damage as well, nonetheless. Another character that slightly missed out would be Gaming, also very high constellation dependent. Not really C6, but you kind of at least need the C4 to actually make him consistent, especially without a character like Shen Yun or Bennett, right? Because you kind of want like the energy for him to burst pretty regularly. That being said, Gaming has very good scalings for a 4-star, and eventually like at C6 he gets so strong that most people can consider him as like a pseudo 5-star at this point in time. And especially with like Silali coming out, definitely boosted him quite a lot in the process. So yeah, Gaming is definitely a good character at high constellations. So if you do have him high constellations, he's also pretty decent as well. One last shout out would actually be Diona. To be honest, I thought Diona was falling off with the introduction of Furina, but with Malvika, her C6 has gotten a lot better. Not only for Malvika, but also like Alakino to a certain extent, because she also appreciates the shield over the healing. That being said, because she only works with pyro characters, I kind of put Rosaria over her, because like having only pyro characters is kind of a niche thing. So I didn't really want to add Diona in for an archetype that requires her C6 and also only against one team comp, which is Melt basically. And so that's that for this video. Once again, appreciate all of you who have been here throughout the year, whether you were day 1 or day 365. appreciate you guys, especially for those of you who are subscribed. And if you're not subscribed, obviously you can press the subscribe button at the bottom. If you like these videos, thumbs up, share, comment, all that good stuff. And do note that I stream live on Twitch. Link description below. And I hope to fix my inconsistent schedule because it is quite bad. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, stay healthy, stay safe, be good to yourselves and the people around you. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.